all across America and around the world. This is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Good day. I'm Jim Fausone. I'm the officer of the deck today here on Veterans Radio, and thanks for joining us. We've got some interesting stories for you. We always want to remind you you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or at the web, veteransradio.org, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.org. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank National Veteran Business Development Council, NVBDC.org. It was established to certify both service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses. You'll find out how they can help your business by going to NVBDC.org. We want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. We just want to remind you that Veterans Radio podcasts are available on all your favorite streaming platforms, including RSS.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Rees Across America Radio. So wherever you are, you can find us, whether it's on your mobile phone or your computer or your laptop, your tablet. But listen in to Veterans Radio Podcasts. We post something new every week, and you're going to find it informative. We want to welcome to Veterans Radio today an Army veteran of some 30 years, Will Bruck, who was a chief warrant officer retiring in 2023. Will, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Well, thank you, Jim, for the invite. It's an honor to be on today, sir.
Well, we're going to talk about your experience with equine therapy, but let me set this up a little bit. As I said to our audience, Will served for 30 years in the Army. He did 4 tours of duty overseas, including Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. Along the way, he collected 2 Bronze Stars, Meritorious Service Medal, a Combat Action Badge. But in his non-military career, he's been a journeyman lineman with IBEW, and he's awfully happy he's not out servicing electrical grids in southeast Michigan in the freezer weather we have at the moment. But it also became a small business owner in the home care business, has a local Visiting Angels offices in southeast Michigan. He's been elected to the Michigan House of Representatives and is serving District 30. Got a family and a lot of active involvement in things like disabled American veterans, veterans of foreign wars, Little Blessings Veterans and Community Outreach, and the Rotary Club. Will, I don't know how you have time for it all, but again, the focus today will be on equine therapy. So again, thanks for joining us.
No, I appreciate the introduction, and yeah, I got a lot of experiences, and hopefully, that comes with a lot of baggage to it at times when you're talking combat tours and such. But working with equine therapy and Little Blessings Veteran Outreach, I sit on the board as the president currently for the last 2 years. And so it's an honor to talk today about equine therapy.
Well, let's jump off there because you mentioned, that much time in the combat tours. It's not unusual. Somebody has a little bit, as you referred to it, baggage, PTS in particular. Tell us about what baggage you had and what led you to try equine therapy.
Wow, that's a loaded question, but they say nobody goes to war and comes back the same. And
no,
it took me 3 tours before I believed that. To be honest, it was, a lot of rejection of changes within, my own psyche. You have physical issues. Anyone that served 30 plus years in the military, you're going to have physical ailments and issues. But when you're faced with the situations and the environment that you're put into, being in combat, that it also changes you mentally, whether you are aware or admit it or not. And so coming home, it was, I was in Iraq in 03 and 04. I call it the Wild West, and came home, and I thought I was the same. Looking back, I wasn't. I went again in 09 back to Iraq, and came home even more different, but yet refusing, to admit that. I went to Afghanistan in 14, 15, and then when I came home, the wheels fell off, and I still refused to get help. I refused to admit that I had a problem. And it just caused expounded difficulties between family. And you failed to mention I have 9 children. My wife and I have 9 together, all natural born, all our own.
Well, and your story up until the 9 children is pretty typical. I mean, it's all the guys and gals who've done these multiple rotations. You're going to, things change, and you may not believe that, but your family sees it, and the family starts saying, hey, man, you got to get a little help. Talk to somebody. And I suspect that's what was going on.
I mean, there was a time or two, with my spouse, Natalie. She's a saint. She's endured so much, that she said, you have to get help. And I would get help to the degree that it satisfied her needs. And, but at the time, I take a time period after 2015 that, for 10 plus years, I lived with bitterness and with no regret for anything that I did. In 2020, I went back for my 4th tour, Iraq and Syria. Honestly, I went back. I told my wife I was going back to get fixed. As stupid as that sounds now, but that was my mentality. Like, I'm going to go get fixed. And, I came back thinking I was fixed. I got my last tour in, and, you mentioned my daughter wrote the book. During that time I was deployed in 2020, 21, my family started going through Little Blessings. My wife actually started before I deployed in 2020. For 3 months, she was going weekly to Little Blessings for horse equine therapy. And I didn't know she was even going until she told me after 3 months. And that's how irrelevant and detached I was from my family. And I say that with regret now, but until really recently, I had no regrets on that. And even up until current point, my kids went through the program in 21. They started the kids program, an 18-week program. The adult program is 50 weeks, so it's a whole year long. But when I came back from Iraq in 21, I saw my kids. It helped me. I started to get involved in Little Blessings, but still did not address the issues, the root issues of bitterness and PTSD and the anger and the lack of guilt. And then actually December of last year, I enrolled into the program. So I'm actually new at I was president of the organization, but yet, having never been through the program. But last December, prior to Christmas, we as a family hit a point where I finally admitted I need help that I haven't been getting. And so I'm actually about 5 weeks into the program right now. So that's kind of current. That's 25 years in 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's impossible to do justice to the story in the time we have here in this interview, but I think it's important because people don't be surprised, ashamed, rooted into the ground if you don't, quote unquote, fix yourself right away. It takes years to get to the point where you find something, first off, that you admit that, hey, I need to do something, and you find something that works for you. And for some people, equine therapy may be the thing that works. Now, you live and your family lives in a rural area. You got a little, you might call it a hobby farm. But what led Natalie to equine therapy, and why did you ultimately go, yeah, maybe I need to get with the program?
Well, what brought her to it was the inability to cope with what I wasn't coping with. That's what brought her to the table. She met Jamie Paxton, who started Little Blessings in about 2018. And that's what drew Natalie to the program. And it gave her a lot of things in her toolbox on how to deal with a veteran, being married to a veteran. She now leads the spouse group that meets every other week at Little Blessings. My kids get into the program. And when I came home in 21, I saw my kids in a program, and I remember crying, watching my kids, seeing and talking to the mental health specialist, that was explaining the issues, the problems that my kids were having. And at that point, I knew that my problems, my PTSD was, in a sense, being transcended to my family. Now, I wasn't to the point where I cared enough to fix myself, but I was successful at business. I was a chief warrant officer for. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. I was successful in the military as well as civilian life as a reservist. But bringing me to the table was, we've run 30-some vets through this program, year-long program at Little Blessings, and it has changed the life of multiple families, all these families, not just the vet, but the whole family.
Well, let me give the full name of it. It's Little Blessings Veterans and Community Outreach, if I've got it right. And
yes.
And Jamie Paxton, who you referred to, who I think is the executive director, she did 25 years in the United States Air Force and came out as a first sergeant. So again, somebody who's been there and knows the personality of somebody who says, "I'm a chief warrant officer. What the hell are you going to tell me?" Right?
Yeah. And we're the ones that have all the answers. If you've been in the Army or the Marines, the warrant officers are the ones everyone goes to for help. We are the ones that are supposed to have the answers, but when we don't have the answers for ourselves, it's hard as a human being to admit that. And that was my problem.
So what is it about the horses? Why equine therapy? Why not just go to the VA and talk to a mental health person? Why was it the equine therapy that drew you in?
Well, for me, horses scare the crap out of me, so that's a start. and it's a challenge. Secondly, equine therapy, and specifically EGALA, is the model that we follow. It's a nationally recognized model. It's not going out and riding horses. It's not, equestrian things. It's interacting with the horses, and horses have an innate ability. They're a fight or a flight animal. Their reactions are based off their instinct. Either they're going to fight or they're fleeing. And a lot of times that's where vets end up getting. When I look at my history, coming back from tours, and the inability to deal with the issues at home, the children, the upheaval, the arguments, or different things that come up, we either fight or we flight. That's a military-bred instinct. Horses have that same instinct. And so working with the horses, you're learning how, number one, to identify those problems that you have, but number two, how to manage those problems. And the horses have this unique ability to do that and to mirror your emotions, your anxiety, and it helps you regulate those things. Now, obviously, I'm only 5 weeks into the program. There's a lot that I haven't seen yet, but that's, this is what it does for the veteran.
Well, and you've been around it, though, now for years through the family.
Yes.
And I want to talk a little bit about, so that you could do some bragging on what it did for the kids, and Anna in particular, the direction that she took it.
It changed my kids' outlook, because as the title of my daughter's book, she wrote Hope on Four Hooves. My family, we're a very religious family. We're Christian. We worship and we believe in God and we have faith. But but in the situation with their father. Take my daughter was 14 when she wrote the book. She didn't have a lot of hope that things were going to work out at that time. And through the equine therapy, it allowed my kids to learn how to regulate those emotions that were being passed on to them and to bring hope back to my family, right alongside with God was there the whole time. But, there's the physical and the spiritual, and sometimes the two, one's weaker than the other, depending on the situation. And physically and emotionally, my kids were falling apart because of the anxiety that I had that I was creating in them. And so, them going through the program and my wife going through the program, it allowed them to get hope back again that things are going to be okay, and there's a way out of this darkness that we have been placed into.
And this is a if you will, private nonprofit. And I want to point that out because of the family aspect of this. Veterans can go to the VA for mental health care, but VA doesn't do anything for the family. It's not designed, authorized, funded for family mental health care. So things like Little Blessings Veteran Outreach are important, and supporting those are important because it's a family affair, not just a veteran affair. And let me tell you that, veteran radio listeners, we're talking to Will Bruck, Chief Warrant Officer 4, 30 years in the Army, in his and his family's experience with equine therapy. Little Blessings Veteran Outreach, you can find it on the web at lbveteranoutreach.org if you want some more information. As I said, its founder and executive director is a 25-year Air Force veteran, so she knows what she's talking about. Will, as you begin the process of going through the program, is it something that you sort of begin to see changes in yourself, or recognizing patterns before they get too developed? What do you expect to get out of the program?
Right now, I'm learning to recognize the patterns of the horse. So the emotions or reactions of the animal, it takes an eye. So, I used to make fun of my wife, going to talk to Mr. Ed, the horse.
Right.
What's he going to teach us? What's he going to teach you? How does he talk, etc. But the horses have definite reactions based off their emotions. Number one is realizing what is making, the reactions, the good and the bad reactions in that animal. That's what I'm in the process of learning right now, and to regulate and to build trust with that creature in order for that creature to, help me. It sounds, sometimes it's voodoo sounding, but it literally has changed the lives of many, many veterans just in our own community. And again, our organization, the VA, I would question whether the VA mental health helps a lot, but you can talk to somebody once a month or every other month or every quarter. You're discussing problems and trying to fix problems, but Little Blessings encompasses the entire family and the entire psyche of the person. It's a family affair. We have the family dinners once a month. We have the children's program. It's a place where veterans, when they're done with the program, they still continue to come to the ranch to interact with the animal that they went through the program with, and their support. There's other veterans there that have been through the same program or currently in the program that are there to also interact with that veteran. It gives a camaraderie as well as the family getting that support mechanism as well. And again, it's all supported by private funds.
Yeah, the horse picks up on your aggression, right? I mean, if you're hostile, it reacts a certain way. If you can calm yourself, it calms itself. And is that what you're talking about when you say, I'm just learning to read the horse?
Yes, sir. Yeah, if you have high anxiety, the horse is going to exhibit those same symptoms because they pick up, because they're a fight or flight animal. They are unsure of your feeling, your anxiety they can feel. Now, I don't know how they do it, but they do it. And their reaction is either they're going to fight you or they're going to flee. They're going to flee from you. They're trying to decide what they're going to do. And so I'm in the portion of reading those emotions of the horse, but those are really, truly my emotions that are coming out in the horse.
Now, this Little Blessings Veterans Outreach is in Monroe County, just a little bit north of the Ohio state line. But these kind of therapy, equine therapy programs are all over the country, and there are some, I don't know if I'd call it standards or groups. I know one of them is the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship International. And you mentioned, at Little Blessings, they're following a sort of a time-tested... Yeah. EGALA model, and there's an association, EGALA, it's nationally certified. There's EGALA, people that practice the EGALA model throughout the U.S. There's only a very small handful that specifically do it strictly for veterans. And that's, again, if you're listening to this or on Veterans Radio or the podcast and you're thinking, hey, I got this might work for a friend of mine, or they ought to just look into it, or maybe it's something I'd be interested in. There are resources available. You might have to search them out a little bit, by going onto the internet or maybe talking to a VA social worker and getting a referral. Again, this is going to be on the private side of things. It's not a VA hospital benefit. That's for damn sure.
No, it is not. I mean, we would love for it to be at some point, supported by the VA, and they see the benefit of it, because there's been conversations even at the local level with the Ann Arbor VA, but it has yet to be adopted by the VA as one of their methods. So, but we'll stay optimistic.
And EGALA, for those of us who are functionally illiterate in this area, which I am, it's Equine Assisted Psychotherapy, EAGALA.org, where, again, you can find, it's got a link for Find a Program, for example, and you can get more information if you're down in Louisiana or you're over in New York. You can probably find something nearby that is worth giving a go. And is it a combination, both, Will, of kind of working with the horse and working with a mental health therapist?
Yes, there's a mental health therapist at the sessions. There's an EGALA certified handler at the sessions. And it's a pretty strict program. Each session is made to address a slightly different avenue, or a different step in the program. You lead the horses, and your commands, you're given commands to give to the horse as you lead it. And the horse will obey or not obey based off your level of anxiety or command, your confidence level. There's so many variables within it, but it's proven to work and help, and we see it working each and every day. I think currently at our place we have 15 or 16 veterans in the program right now, and there's 4 different phases. So they're not all, it's individual sessions, but they're all different times of the week in different phases.
This has been very interesting, and again, I think most veteran radio listeners wouldn't know about this, Will Bruck. They wouldn't be able to maybe suggest it to somebody who this is perfect for. So I really appreciate the time that you've given us today to talk about how it's helped the family, as well as Dad finally getting on board and going, okay, I'm going to, suck it up and do this myself. And see the value. They were probably surprised that Dad finally came around to it, but I bet they're all pretty happy.
I've gotten a lot of positive comments, Jim, from not just from my family, but also other veterans that are, proud or thankful that I took this step, because I am kind of a public figure. I'm a state house rep member. I'm I'm pretty famous in my area. I'm a business owner, and I don't want to say I'm humble, but it takes a lot of humility to admit that you need help. And I've had a lot of veterans reach out to me and say thank you for what you've done.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for taking time to share this story and give a little hope out there to the veteran community, and maybe looking at equine therapy as something that they ought to do. Will, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate you, sir.
And I want to thank everybody for listening to Veterans Radio today. I am Jim Fausone. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm a veterans disability lawyer at Legal Help for Veterans, and you can reach us at 800-693-4800 or legalhelpforveterans.com on the web. You can follow Veterans Radio on Facebook and listen to its podcasts and internet radio shows
by visiting us at veteransradio.org. That's veteransradio.org. We again want to thank our national sponsors, the National Veterans Business Development Council, NVBDC.org, Legal Help for Veterans, a veterans disability law firm with a national practice before the VA, can help you on your claims and your appeals. It can be reached at legalhelpforveterans.com or 1-800-693-4800. We also want to thank our local sponsors. This would include the Charles S. Kettles chapter of the Vietnam Veterans of America, that's Chapter 310, VFW Graf O'Hara Post 423, the American Legion Irwin Preskin Post 46 in Ann Arbor as well, the VA Ann Arbor Healthcare System, and certainly the National Vietnam Veterans of America Association. You can be a sponsor by going to veteransradio.org, clicking on the About Us and our sponsors, and help us out. Keep this program alive for the 21 and 22 years. Keep us going for another 20. Thank you.